our dear viewers, and welcome to a new edition of our program Africa Today. In today's edition of the program, we are going to shed light about Egypt's trade with Africa, which is it is expected to increase by the year 2027 to reach 7.4 billion US dollar. Indeed, between January and October 2023, Egypt's export to African nations increased by 13%, totaling 6 billion US dollar. Notably, Egypt is the country with the highest intra-market share in the common market for Eastern and Southern Africa, COMESA. Egypt was one of the first countries to sign the African Continental Free Trade Agreement in an effort to increase the amount of Egyptian exports to the African markets. More details in the following story.
Egypt exports to African countries surged by 13% between January and October 2023, reaching a total of $6 billion. This was discussed during a meeting between Minister of Trade and Industry Ahmed Samir and Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli, where they explored the strategies to enhance Egypt's trade relations with African nations. It is noteworthy that Egypt holds the largest share of intra-trade within the common market for Eastern and Southern Africa, the COMESA. In 2022, the trade volume between Egypt and COMESA countries reached its highest level, totaling $4.3 billion, as highlighted by the Trade Minister. To expand the presence of Egyptian exports in African markets, Egypt was among the early adopters of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. During the meeting, Samir presented proposed strategies for establishing comprehensive Egyptian commercial centers in Africa. These plans leverage the resources of an Egyptian company for export and import, which possesses assets in multiple African countries. In Kenya, the plan is to utilize a 2,100 square meter plot owned by the Egyptian company in Nairobi, the capital, to establish an Egyptian logistics center. This center will cater especially to storage and handling services for Egyptian exports. For Tanzania, the ministry proposed the establishment of an Egyptian commercial center in Dar es Salaam, emphasizing the importance of warehouses to facilitate the availability of Egyptian goods in the area. In November, the Central Agency for Public Mobilization and Statistics reported a 15.6% increase in Egypt's exports to COMESA countries in 2022, reaching $3.554 million compared to $3.66 million in 2021.
And indeed, Egypt is seeking to increase the trade with the African nations to reach 20% growth in intracontinental trading, 20% for the coming 5 years to reach 7.4 billion US dollar. To shed more light on the issue, we are very much delighted to be joined over the phone by Professor of Economics at Ain Shams University, Dr. Sayyid Kholy. Dr. Kholy, good afternoon to you and happy Ramadan.
Good afternoon, madam, and happy Ramadan.
Sir, Egypt is seeking to increase its trade with Africa by almost 20% growth in intra-continental free trade agreement in the coming 5 years to reach 7.4 billion US dollars. Can you provide more details about this intentions by the Egyptians to increase the trade with the African nations?
Of course, this is a result for the hard work and extensive work happened years ago. It doesn't happen overnight. It happened after our role as a leader of African Union years ago, and the effort and work of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi with African leaders years ago. And today we have really a strong relationship with our African partner. We have a lot of treaties between Egypt and many African countries, and that helps our export to our African nation, to be this number, which is $7 billion, and expect to be more and more in the future. The main really product we send right now and export right now is marble and phosphate and cement. And all of this is really one part of what we are going to export in the near future to African Union. Remember the agreement which is signed by African Union among 47 African nations. It really eliminates the tariff between the members of this treaty and also with COMESA and so on. It helped Egypt to be the number one exporter among African countries.
Yes. Sir, from your point of view, what are the factors that have led to the decision to focus on the increasing of the intra-continental trading?
Of course, Egypt working in all different avenues in order to really overcome the inflation we face, which is one of the most important factors the Egyptian government focus on right now is increase their industrial capacity and increase its agricultural capacity. And whether we talk about agriculture or industry, one of the major components as an input of industrial sector or agricultural sector is materials, raw materials, and so on. And African continent is really has a wealth of minerals and a lot of agricultural resources in terms of land, in terms of food supply. It's considered to be a main source for producing, whether we talk about agricultural product or industrial product. And when we have agreement with this African nation, we can really obtain the material as an input for our industrial and agricultural sector in a very, very low price, and we can be able to compete all over the world with, because cost we can consider as a competitive priority for us to be able to export to Europe and many European nations.
Yes. Doctor, what specific measures in Egypt planning to implement in order to achieve a 20% growth in the intra-continent trading with the different African nations?
We already have really a strategy which is stated when we have Egypt Vision 2030. We stated a vision in order to expand our activity not only in local content but in African content and worldwide also. Of course, Egypt really concentrating on technological part of our strategy for our because we have a lot of expertise, especially when it comes to Africa in irrigation, in agriculture, and so on. And we use this as a strategic weapon in order to enhance our relationship with African nations.
Indeed. Sir, what actually is the role the infrastructure development is playing in Egypt's plan to increase the trading with the African nations? And are these actually specific projects or initiatives in place to support this?
Of course, logistics is very important when we talk about how to increase the export, whether by 20% and so on. You have to have the infrastructure. And remember now, Egypt have very, very strong infrastructure when it comes to logistics. And when we talk about logistics, we talk about land logistics, where we have to build a highway between Egypt and Africa right now. It goes to African nations, Sudan, for example, and the future it will go to South Africa, which include all African nations. And when we talk about logistics, we talk about sea, where Egypt to connect with Africa through the Nile River, through Red Sea River. We have to enhance that among our African nations. And when we talk about air logistics, Egypt is now considered to be as a hub or the European gate for African nations to be able to go to Europe. So logistics is very important issue in order to increase the volume and value of export among African nations, and how to use Egypt as a hub to be able to, for African nations to export their product and service to Europe. Egypt is the European gate for African nations. That's very important.
Sir, actually in July 2023, the Information and Decision Support Center shared that trading between African nations was reported at less than 18% compared to around 50% in trade between the Asian countries. And 70% between the European countries. How do you refer this low percentage of trade between the different African nations so far?
It is low right now, but in the future it will reach 30, 40, even 60% in the future. We don't have to forget the incubation of European countries to several African nations up to this point of time. Up to this point of time, there is some European countries really consume 50% of the total revenue of several African nations. That is, it really destroys their ability to be able to increase their partnership. But this kind of occupation almost ended last year, for example, where a couple of African nations declared liberation from France and so on, and some from United Kingdom and so on. Remember, several countries in Africa up to this point of time occupy not only military but economical occupation. And it happened until now. Of course, in the future, we'll be able to expand and again and again. The leadership of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi during his presidency to European, to African Union enhances this issue and make it clear if we are united in African nations, will be a combative woman. Remember, African continent is still a virgin continent, and we have to work together in order to enhance their capability.
Indeed. Dr. Said Kholy, Professor of Economics at Ain Shams University, thank you so much, sir, for your precious input. Always a pleasure. And in a display of solidarity and humanitarianism in Tahya Masr Fund and Al Azhar Zakah and Charity House have joined forces to send the crucial aid to the people of Gaza during the holy months of Ramadan.
The Tahya Misr or Long Live Egypt Fund dispatched a convoy of 101 trucks laden with over 1,600 tons of medical supplies, food, essential supplies to support Palestinians in Gaza during Ramadan. This initiative aims to address urgent medical needs and provide essential food and supplies amid the horrifying conditions the Israelis are imposing on Gazans. The medical supplies include ventilators, kidney equipment, monitors for tracking patients' vital signs, equipment for premature newborns, essential medications, as well as medicines for treating chronic disease. Additionally, the convoy carries significant quantities of staple dry food items like rice, pasta, sugar, and oil, along with beverages and dairy products. The aid also includes blankets, hygiene products, and clothing. The aid will be sent through the Rafah border crossing and distributed by the Palestinian Red Crescent to ensure it reaches displaced children and families. Tamer Abdel Fattah, Executive Director of the Tahya Misr Fund, highlighted the involvement of young volunteers in this humanitarian effort. Tahya Misr Fund sent relief convoys for Gaza in November 2023, consisting of 199 trucks and 2 ambulances, and in 2021 a convoy with 130 trucks. Earlier, Al Azhar Zakat and Charity House announced that it dispatched a Ramadan convoy of 100 trucks filled with 2,000 tons of humanitarian trucks relief aid, including food and medical supplies, to support the people of Gaza. According to the statement by the Zakat and Charity House, this is the fifth such aid convoy and the largest to date. The trucks are in North Sinai and will enter through the Rafah border crossing.
Well, our dear viewers, the Muslims in Niger are beginning the holy month of Ramadan, but the country's residents are facing crippling inflation, which makes it harder and harder to buy their necessities. A glimmer of optimism was provided by the embargo being lifted mere weeks before Ramadan, but the situation on the ground was still severe.
As the holy month of Ramadan commences for Muslims in Niger, citizens are grappling with skyrocketing prices, making it increasingly difficult to afford essential items. The transition of power has left the country's economy in turmoil, exacerbated by the embargo imposed by neighboring countries that lasted nearly 8 months. The lifting of the embargo just weeks before Ramadan offered a glimmer of hope, but the reality on the ground remains dire. Basic necessities such as rice, sugar, oil, and milk, essential for Ramadan observance, have become prohibitively expensive for many citizens. The root of Niger's economic crisis lies in the state's struggle to supply the market with essential goods. The disruption caused by the embargo, combined with the state's inability to effectively manage the economy, has left many citizens facing financial hardship. As Ramadan begins, Nigerians find themselves not only contending with the spiritual reason of fasting, but also grappling with the harsh economic realities imposed by political instability.
Well, with that, our dear viewers, we come to the end of this edition of Africa Today. Many thanks for watching.